This is Board President Lyman. It is 4:01. We are starting our study session today on May 6th, meeting in the SPED office. We are going to be pleased to have a presentation from, we want to welcome everybody here. I think everybody's here now. Yay. We want to welcome everyone and especially want to welcome Val Thomas and Katie Bowman, who will be doing our presentation today about teaching and learning. After their presentation, which will be about 45 minutes, we will be talking about our committee frameworks for our boundary study. So we'll go to that point. We'll turn the time over to Val and Katie. Blue light. This blue light right here needs to be on. So just push the top button. Push it again. Here, just straighten.
It's always the technical things that take the most time. We love technology when it works, and when it doesn't, it's just a time sucker. So thank you for letting us come today. I'll just hold it. We are excited to start a discussion and a dialogue. We've got some information that we are throwing out there for you to consider, but at this point, we're not saying this is what needs to be a part of it, because we know lots of perspectives are helpful, and the smartest person in the room is the room, so having more ideas present is always welcome as we get into a study. So we'll be sharing at the elementary level some ideas for some criteria around creating a robust elementary school. And what that means is we're really setting up the environment for our students to thrive, which is part of our district vision statement that is out in draft form, having lots of discussion and feedback. And we know that visions drive our actions and our decisions and are the core anchor that we must come back to every time to make sure that we are moving our district forward, and that thriving students, which means thriving educators as well. So our criteria are anchored in our district vision statement in its draft form still, knowing that the underlying feeling of that has been, in the discussions I've been in, very supported. So we'll start there.
So for the purpose of this presentation, we're really going to make it more of a discussion than us, the sage on the stage part of this, but really entering a dialogue. And really our purpose behind this is to really get back at what Katie's already kind of set up of the thriving students. We want to have, the purpose of looking at robust schools is we want thriving students, we want thriving educators, and those, how do we have those conditions happen that aren't happening maybe currently in our current configuration. So that'll be the focus as we kind of look at this, and we'll kind of set some like general things up first, and then we'll get into some of the things that we've put together as suggestions.
We also have Jenny Moore. She's super excited. I made her sit on the front row. But she will kind of add to jump in as she has thoughts, or if we have questions for her on the school leading level. Jenny has been in a smaller school, Title I school, dual language immersion school, as well as in a larger school and a different part of Alpine School District. So she's got a wealth of knowledge and perspective, as well as Valen and I leading in similar types of diversity in elementary schools. So we're excited to have her be a part of our discussion as well. There are some universal components in a successful elementary school that are not going to show up in a criteria, because regardless of size and configuration, our educators are creating that in buildings, such as academic support systems, things like clear school routines and procedures, strong and consistent communication channels, as well as those home to school connections. So those are just some of the elements that we see in our schools that our families really feel successful. We see successful outcomes for students. So in the criteria, those are embedded in kind of the categories we'll be talking about. And if we want to get into details of that later on, we will. But I just wanted to front load that you won't hear us explicitly naming those in the criteria, because they fall under those broader categories, if that makes sense. So before we dive in, yes.
Katie, I think it would be helpful that when you see a connection between those and one of these broader categories, if you would articulate that, that would just be really helpful to alert
Absolutely.
me in my understanding.
Absolutely.
Good.
Happy to do that. So you each received an orange folder with it a packet of information. So I'm going to give you an overview, yes, of what's in there. We're going to start with that first page, which is an infographic that kind of talks about the broad criteria we'll be referencing. And then there's a lot of spreadsheets behind that and a lot of numbers and what on earth is this. And we'll get into that a little bit later, which will give us specifics about out of area, projected enrollment, as well as some current schools in Alpine School District. All of the private information has been scrubbed of what their current FTE status is, how that falls into grade levels and their enrollment and specialties. So that's kind of what you have information to consider, and we'll talk about those, give you some more details of what those reports mean, so that as a board, when you are in your work sessions and considering, you've got a little bit more information. So to start, we're going to jump into our infographic. Our very first criteria that we would like to consider in a robust elementary school is having our teachers have a single grade teaching assignment. We know that there is a lot of work and preparation that goes into really strong teaching. And we ask sometimes, because of our enrollment size, teachers to teach 2 grade levels, so 2nd and 3rd grade, 4th and 5th grade. And our teachers that do that do a fabulous job, and that is additional extra work for them, and it changes the educational experience for the students. Because our teachers are fabulous, our students get solid learning outcomes, but we know year on year on year, if they're constantly experiencing that type of split experience, there are some unintended consequences, and we worry about our thriving educator piece because there is a higher likelihood, in my opinion, of our educators really burning out because of the extra that takes for them. So that is one consideration.
Does that ever happen? Does that ever happen where we're doing a third, fourth split or a first, second split or whatever in bigger schools? And I understand the math there, but I mean, is it sometimes still happen, or once you get past 1,500 kids in an elementary, it never happens?
Well, I'm sure at 1,500, yeah, probably doesn't ever happen. But yes, there are some enrollment bands that we see it less likely to happen. That's part of when we get into some enrollment things that we'll be able to take a look at. That there are some size, just enrollment off the top factors, but there are some other mitigating things that size alone won't get rid of splits. Sometimes you have a bubble grade where everybody has a student in 2nd grade, and so we've got 43 kids. Well, let's do 39. 39 kids, way too many for one classroom, but you don't have that type of ratio. But there are some sizes that it is less likely to have those split classes than other sizes. That's a great question.
And you will tell us what those sizes are on the back pages?
Yes, we'll get into more of those specific numbers.
I can't wait.
Just asking, when you do have a split like that, which grade is more likely to be carrying the burden of that split? The higher grade or the lower grade? I mean, is that depending on the teacher?
Yeah, it really is depending on the teacher. I'm thinking of times I had to do it as a building principal. I try to stay away from the 3rd and 4th because there's such a transition between those, but often it was 5th and 6th when the bubble gets bigger. Yeah, and so those teachers do miracles when they try to do that. But those contents are closer, but still not the best optimum experience for a student, even with your very, very best.
Would you rather have us just wait for the questions until? So,
No,
have we noticed any? I'm a product of 2 mixed classes, 3rd, 4th, and then 5th, 6th back in the day, and I felt like it didn't affect me, but I don't know. Do we have any data showing how it affects the kids in those classes? I know it's extra work for the teachers. I mean, that's obvious. But do we have any data on the learning in those split classes?
Um, we haven't studied deeply into that. We can, um, because again, the most important factor in a student's learning is their teacher, and you pick your very best teachers to do that. Typically because there is additional, it may show up on more social implications or different ways. And again, it depends on the school, because if you have a split and other teachers on a grade level to help mitigate that versus if we're in a very small school, and we'll talk about that collaborative teaming, it's felt more outside of the workload that teacher does with double preps and how do you balance things like math instruction, I think is the most difficult, because literacy you can build on a sliding scale of skills, because they really do build, whereas math, there are isolated things that do build, but there are some subjects that don't cross. And so then how do you leverage your schedule in the day and what isn't happening because you have to do that for certain core subjects.
Is there any stipend paid to a teacher who's teaching a double?
No. Currently, we provide some aid time supports to help with that, but there aren't additional stipends that they receive.
Hey, David, we just have to look at you and we see the good and the bad.
Yeah.
I see the social implications.
Touche.
David, I would have said the humor implications.
Yeah.
The
There
social.
we go.
You have to be the class clown.
Class clown to get some attention. It's awesome.
And I was.
So then similarly along this type of vein of assignments, moving into giving schools class placement options. We know that if you have one teacher in a grade level and that teacher's personality doesn't vibe with that student, they're there for the year. Or sometimes we have some students that do better when they're not with certain other students and you don't have an option to provide different learning environments for them, which can be tricky. As well as, parent involvement and requests and desires, knowing their students. If there's one teacher or one teacher in a split class, that really does limit our ability to engineer the environment for the student to be able to thrive as well. So having more teachers on a grade level does have those implications as well, and not just on the academic side. Jenny, did you want to add anything there?
I think you're doing a beautiful job.
And I know all of us have worked in schools where we've had limited placement options.
And I can say at Windsor, I have had several opportunities.
You need the microphone, sorry.
I have had several opportunities over the last few years where there have been situations like that, and I have to call Northridge or Orchard and say like, hey, this is the situation. It's a great student, but this is a problem. And so I've had to, outsource my kids because I only have one gen ed class with my dual language. So it's tricky sometimes.
We also have Northridge principal here too, so if we need her.
And then my final section, kind of thinking about the teaching staffing, are providing robust collaborative teams and the opportunity for professional learning communities within a building. So, if we think about the number of teachers on a grade level and really being able to look at student learning outcomes, collaborate about our teaching practice, and become learners as adults, we need more than just a partner teacher to have a discussion to know, because if we're both getting similar results, okay, what else are we doing within our team, and how are we supporting those adults so that they can thrive as well? The same goes up to the school level. If we have fewer teachers and we're trying to build, this is where multi-tiered systems of support. If we're trying to build those systems and we have very few teachers, those teachers are carrying outside of their teaching load additional committee assignments and other work to make that actualize, which is needed. Everybody sees value in that, and we're adding to the plate of the same individuals versus a school that has bigger school teams, bigger enrollment, you can diversify that, and then you get diverse perspectives as well on those teams to help improve practices.
Question, is there a point when it's too many people on a team? Does it get to where collaboration doesn't happen if there's too many and they start breaking up into small groups?
Yes. So one of the considerations that we're looking at is if we don't have the presence of certain programs. So if a DLI school needs a different number of teachers on a team to optimize that versus a traditional elementary. So if we're looking at teaching size, 3 to 4, usually you've got enough to engage. We can bounce different ideas. We can spread students across. And even with an ALL class, 3 can be a little tight, but you can do 3 to 4 on a grade level. If you have the presence of a dual language program where 2 of the teachers on the grade level are within the program and you only have 3 teachers, that leaves 1 general education teacher, which goes back to lack of access for class placement choice and other things. So for them, 4 to 5 is actually more optimal when we're creating those environments and building committees.
Max, you would say, would be.
Yeah, I mean, it can be done, and I am over schools that have 6 and 7 on a grade level that are highly effective teams, because that's just what they do, and some really clear structures. So I'm not saying that those bigger schools can't achieve, but it takes some real purposeful buy-in and engagement, because it's easier to check out in a group of 7 than it is a group of 4, if that makes sense. Any other questions with that? Great, clarifying.
And if you think about just collaboration in general, right? It's, you know, if it's just Joe and I sitting in a room having a conversation, we think we're having really great ideas, but there's nobody to push back on those because we're the geniuses in the room. That's the piece that misses when it's so small. You can't really go deeper in thinking about, okay, this or that, some outside perspective, because you kind of get that unithink going on. And then, again, it just helps teachers thrive when you have a little bit of other perspective in a team 3 to 4 and 4 to 5. So.
Okay, I think it's you.
Oh, it's me. Yep. So that brings us a little to specialty offerings, and in the small schools, it's harder to provide those opportunities, and specialties exist for 2 reasons. Reason number 1 is there's core content out there, and this helps support our regular ed teachers in providing a teacher who can come in and teach those core content. We'll say art, computer science, PE. If that is absent, then that falls to the teacher to have to add that into their curriculum on top of everything else. But secondly, it provides that well-rounded look at for a student in an educational setting, experimenting in arts or computer science or whatever it is that they find their passion in. You know, in our district right now, we have the one thing that supports some of that is the BTS, Beverly Taylor Sorensen Arts Grant, and a lot of our schools have that, and that helps be able to maximize bringing in someone who's a high quality teacher who is certified in that art form to be able to teach our kids. What an experience to have. I think back about mine, not that mine was bad, but we pretty much did crafts, and that's about my extent of artwork as crafts. So, but it really does provide that well-rounded thing. But having, again, a school that's a little bit more mid-sized to upper size allows those full complement of specialties. As a district, we've always had kind of 3 core ones that we support because we have coaches and people who support it. That's been PE, computer science, and then our arts coaches that support any of the art forms. But that doesn't mean we can't think outside the box going forward. But when we're trying to support a content, we ought to have content being taught, not underwater basket weaving or some other thing of that nature. But so that's kind of what we've had going on. But again, ideas to provide a well-rounded experience for kids to explore. And we talk about joyful learning and the joy of learning. We have probably a boatload of surveys we could pull out and show you guys of kids saying how much they love their art class, their PE class, it is part of the joy of going to school, and a step out for a minute, and also deepening that merely that genuine learning that we're talking about as a philosophy here in this district. It does help support that, but these part of a robust school will allow that to happen.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, what would be an optimal number of specialty offerings at a robust and thriving elementary school? 3 seems like it's the minimum. Is
It's
so?
not in our small schools. It's usually 1 to 2.
No, but what I'm saying,
Well, I
you need it.
recommend-
If again, I'm thinking not the reality. I'm saying if you're going to be a robust and a thriving school, elementary school, what's the minimum number of specialties would you, as a principal, feel like you would need to have to say,
I
yep,
always felt
we
like
are robust
4.
and thriving?
I think like 4 is really gives a lot of opportunity. A couple of the different arts, music and visual
Mm-hmm.
arts, and then physical education, obviously a big piece, and then the computer science, because computers, if you don't know computers, and I know we've got new legislation thing around it, but still there's a core that provides kids opportunity to start learning, because it's becoming a life skill.
Right.
You can't even work at McDonald's or anywhere else anymore without some basic knowledge of computers.
So
I would add 4.
you'd say 4, okay?
Music and visual arts. So you have 2 arts, right?
Yeah,
You said
2 art
arts.
forms. I mean, you could, because in our schools we've got some drama, we have dance, we have art, and then music.
And then, so why are there some school? So is it purely a function of size? Because you hear there's some schools that have more, even though they have less students. So I guess historically, how has ASD handled that and individual schools with specialty?
It's based on the commitment of a principal to use different funding, like TSSA, trust lands, and we also, some of our FTE that we get with specialty, but it is really tied into teacher ratio.
So one of the criteria is looking at school funding allocations. So FTEs come with a percentage of specialty. If you're in smaller enrollment, but we want to offer more specialty classes, schools are using their school level funding, which is up to their discretion with their parent groups and plans, as well as some other things to make that happen. So you see more, but they're committing funds that if we build a system to say we're creating a school that provides that, then it frees up those funds to help other areas of learning.
So there's opportunity cost that the school is doing without something, so they can provide.
With how we're doing it right now.
So just to clarify, current funding process is that specialty support from the district is associated with FTE.
Yes, because that helps provide prep time, which is in teacher contracts negotiated agreement.
Correct.
So for every 1 FTE, they receive 0.07 of specialty allocation, which added together provides that 2 hours of prep time per teacher. So if you have 10 teachers in the building, that's not going to be enough to offer more than like 1 specialty option.
Right. That's the current funding model,
Mhm.
but we don't have to do that funding model. Okay.
I'm looking at Jason.
Just
No.
just being clear.
Yeah, I'm pulling up some. So for example, a school like Aspen that would have about 12 FTEs for their K6, so those 7 grades having 12, would get about a 0.76 in specialty. So trying to divide that over 4, it wouldn't even work. Even over 3, you'd have a quarter of a teacher, so you'd have 3 hourly teachers. But you look at some of these other ones, like a school, I mean, we don't have one in Timpanogos, but a Brookhaven has 33 FTEs to K6 and has 2.5 FTEs for specialty. So Trailside has 35 FTEs in K6 and 2.4 or 2.23 specialty. So 2.25 goes. I mean, then you're having some contracts, not just all hourly, or not having a specialty teacher have to do both PE and computer and be a.
And the way that it's funded now, which is understandable, and pros and cons with that is very few. I would say maybe there's not even a handful of our specialty teachers that are on full-time FTEs in the elementary, which does impact who you can hire and the programming, because we have people that graduate certified in that. They would like a full-time contract, and we just can't offer it with how we've done that. So that's a consideration of, part of that robust PLC and those FTEs, specialized staff and specialty offerings. When we get into it in those staffing sheets that we've provided, you can actually see some specialty and then see how those schools have offset the allocation. So we can go over some of that when we get to that in the packet.
Sorry, before we move on, I'd just like to hear, Jenny, Valen said robust and thriving, he'd want 4. Where are you on that? Uh-huh.
With my numbers, I have enough. I think I have 1.26 FTE, if I'm remembering 1.12 something. So, but I pay for, and so that's 3 hourly specialty teachers approximately. But I pay for a 4th. There's a couple of reasons. That helps with scheduling. We kind of try to plan. I mean, and some of it is just teacher ease. For the schedule, if I can have 4 specialties and they can have library on the 5th day, then they have the same 30 minutes of time every day. Even though library, the teachers go with the students, it still is that their schedule can stay the same. So there's some ease to that. We started with the 4th specialty when I came to Windsor to provide a time for staggered collaboration. So one of those specialties, they actually meet with me and my coaches, and we look at data, we talk about upcoming things, and so it gives me a built-in time to meet with every single team every single week, and that was something that they valued, and so I've continued to fund that. But so
You'd agree that a 4 would be a minimum.
4 is good.
Okay. Kim, where are you?
Minimum, yeah.
I think my district allotment for specialty is less than 1. I want to say it's like maybe 0.8 around there. Jason can pull up the exact number. And so I do fund extra. We do BTS, which BTS pays for 0.35, and then we have to pay for the other 0.5. She's a half-time, and then I use TSSA and trust lands to pay for additional. I just want to add with TSSA and trust lands, that is based on your enrollment. So not only are we giving up something else by funding FTE, we're also not getting, like those large schools that you brought up are probably getting close to $200,000 in their TSSA and trust lands, whereas mine's about 80. So you're already looking at smaller amounts of money to do that with.
Yeah, but in your ideal world, as a principal, do you want 4?
Yes.
Do you want 5?
No, because then you have to look at, are you taking away from content? Like the legislation tells us how many minutes we have to spend per day in ELA and in math. And so if you're adding specialty in there, even though there are standards with it, not every specialty that some schools are offering has standards associated with it. And so you can't get into more without digging into that time for content.
This is what we need. So it sounds
Well,
like 4 is a sweet spot there.
Well, and one of the things, one of the things she didn't mention either, that also means that she can't use her TSSA and trust lands for other things that she absolutely needs that money for.
And one other thing
especially where it's already small.
Yeah, and one other thing we have to consider is it SB 271? Is that the new law about literacy? 241, thanks. Part of that is now that 50% of our TSSA money has to be directly spent on research-based literacy, something that impacts literacy outcomes, and that cannot be a teacher. Yes.
Well, you figure it out. It can't be a teacher.
It can be a coach. It can be a teacher coach, not a teacher. Because a coach is a research-based resource that helps with teachers aren't. I did not write the law.
The state office is still writing the guidance on that.
Sorry.
So because that's a brand new piece of legislation, and part of how it's written is we will be getting guidelines from the state board. So once we receive those, then we'll kind of know more about that.
Can you repeat the law?
It's SB 241.
And it's 50%?
Well, it can be up to 50% if there are certain criteria that haven't been met, yeah.
Sorry, I want to understand these criteria. I'm going to back up to the specialized staff support. You've got
Yeah,
in
we-
your
we
graphic.
skipped it, so,
Yeah, well,
yeah, ask the questions.
you're going to come back to it? Okay, then I'll wait.
I had one thing too on that. So like Windsor, we see is about half the specialty time allocated as Trailside was, but Trailside then wouldn't have 8 specialties. They just have to have each specialty teacher because they have that many more classes. So they have to teach longer, and they have students in the morning and afternoon. Where at Windsor maybe it's one or the other. Does that sound right?
So Jen,
And a lot of them have to be hourly because they're less than a .5 contract. Yeah.
I know there's not a one answer here, but from the two of you plus Fallon and Katie and whoever else, how many FTE would be, I don't want to say ideal because it's like, it's always more and more and more. I understand that. But how many FTE would be necessary to run that program, but not full-time teachers because you don't need full-time teachers in that position.
So,
But
yeah.
hourly means you're getting a different, many times you're getting a different type of teacher there. So
Yeah. So we, in those staffing sheets, when we get into that, and we can jump ahead if we want, we'll kind of go over some
okay,
of
we can
what
wait.
that
I can
looks
wait.
like, because different enrollments, depending on programs and other factors, can shift it a little bit.
So let's jump to the specialized staff support. This is what Kim alluded to, and Jenny as well, as when we put money in one place, it limits other things in other places, correct? So a robust school, we're going to have enough with the funding and the such, be able to, with shifting some of that funding to those interventionists that we have, like our reading interventionist specialists, counselors, paraprofessionals that we have, as well as community outreach coordinators in some of our Title I schools. That's a key component to that. So those funds are tied up often, but in a robust school, we're able to let some of that ease off so that we can provide that as well as those specialties that we've talked about. So
Just a real quick question.
you bet.
Is it true that some of those are not optional, that some of those are required?
Yes.
Yeah, so in the Title schools, Title I schools have some specific requirements, and in our designated ones, there is some funding with Title I. And when we get into programs, we'll talk about a little bit with the nuance there. But considering this is dual purpose, that it's not just, in my opinion, it shouldn't just be up to schools to provide some of those services, like a full-time counselor or like enough aid support or having enough administrators that we're all not running around. So there is a district partnering, but if we can provide a baseline to support that in our creation of a robust elementary school, knowing that then schools can tailor with their school level funds, because every school will have slightly different needs, and we want them to be able to individualize and tailor. But if we can create a baseline, that means that they're not using all of that to just get to a survivor space, versus we can provide that as a base, and then they can tailor and individualize to the unique needs of their site.
Great. So now I want to ask, where do coaches fit in this specialized staff support?
Yeah, well, and they fit there, and they fit in robust collaborative teams, because their work supports all of those. They are specialized individuals in their training and in their work, but they aren't just specialized into one content, unless we're looking at language learner coaches, but even they have broader implications and work. So for me, they're there as well as robust collaborative teams, that they should be embedded in how we're building our schools.
So what my next question is so in your robust, thriving elementary school, how many coaches do you need to support the learning of the students in that school? Do you need 1? Do you need 2? Do you need 5?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I'm talking about numbers here, because anyway,
Yeah.
I know we need coaches,
Yes.
but how many and where and what?
And when we think about that in the work of, say, like what we call a PLC coach or an instructional coach, and everybody needs a coach. We all benefit from feedback. We all benefit from an outside person helping us find our blind spots and where we can improve.
Do I need
So,
a coach?
yes,
Board
damn it.
coach, we need a board.
A board coach, those whisper coaches that help us. But we have that role, and then what is the workload for them to be able to effectively be in those teaching cycles? And again, I work with schools that are very large that still only have one coach versus schools.
And
that
what
are
I'm hearing
smaller.
there is that they probably need two if they're going to be effective.
Likely, depending on the enrollment, yes.
Yeah, so
So, and then when we think about instructional coaches versus our coaches that are coaching additional content areas that are a bit more specialized. So we have our innovative learning coaches that they are master teachers. You need that at the base, but they also are coaching very specific types of skills. So then we look at that. And then in addition, we talk about coaches like for our multi-language learner students, which is a part of our Title I programs. So some of the schools may need more than others, but at a base, I would say probably two at a minimum. Yeah, Darren.
I just wanted to say the purpose of coaching is typically to improve implementation. So really, to answer your question, we would need to determine what is our focus, what are we hoping to improve, are there specific areas where we want teachers to do better?
Can I add something too? If you were to ask any principal why they got into the role, it's typically they want to be an instructional leader at the school. I think if you also asked any principal how much time they're able to dedicate to that, and if it's the amount they want to, they would say no, because there's so much more coming from the managerial side. We don't love it. I think where the PLC coaches come into play and where they're so valued is being in collaboration. So where that number gets, where I feel like it doesn't necessarily need to be doubled if a school size is doubled, is because they are likely working with teams. So when they're working with a team, that team size can change, but it's still just one team. And so I think we can get away with, I think one is a minimum, especially for an instructional coach. But I don't, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And Jenny, I think you want
See, and that kind of makes sense too with our focus in Alpine for the last several years has been to improve the PLC processes in our schools, to help teachers to collaborate better, to help them to set goals, to review those goals through the PLC results cycle. And so having a PLC coach that can focus on that is one area where we would want to improve implementation, but there are also other areas like technology use, for example, math instruction, literacy instruction, behavior management, ESL as an example, multilingual. So there are a number of different areas where we could have our coaches focus. We, I think, as a district team need to determine with our principals, where do we want that focus to be in the future?
And that person, but if we had a math coach, they could support multiple schools because you wouldn't have, so that would be more of a district level position, and they could go around, right? It wouldn't have to be like, you wouldn't need at one elementary school, you're not telling me, Darren, that we need a literacy coach, we need a math coach, we need a technology coach, and a PLC coach. It would be.
Potentially, yes, depending on budget, but we have been to schools across the country where they do have a literacy coach, a math coach, a technology coach, an instructional coach that focuses on instructional strategies, pedagogy, and so it really depends on how we would want to focus those efforts.
And Jenny, before you speak, because I want to hear what you say, but I guess what I'm hearing here is coaches are an important part of a robust and thriving elementary school. That if we said no coaching, you would say, we've got a real problem here in terms of being robust and thriving. Am I hearing that correctly?
You're hearing
Okay,
that correctly.
now please keep going.
I was just going to say, I don't know that there is a magic number of coaches because I think it also depends on the school.
Okay.
Like, if I have 150 MLs, an ML coach is a huge support, as opposed to maybe a school that only has 30 MLs that might just be able to use a paraeducator that works with a coach from another school. Or if you have 10 first-year teachers, one PLC coach is not enough. You know, that we have managed to, unite our coaching team so that my ILC does coaching cycles with new teachers as well as my ML coach doing coaching cycles, because that is too much for one person to do. And so I think that it kind of ebbs and flows with how much you need, but I think a minimum for any school is at least a full-time PLC coach, and I think a minimum is also a half-time ILC. I'm just saying. I've been trying to get one for about 5 years.
And maybe just to underscore all of this about coaching, Sterling, and specific with your questions, is back to what Darren said and echoed by Kim and Jenny, and is implementation. We can train and provide all the professional development, or what I like to call professional learning, but that professional learning does not go anywhere unless we have job-embedded, ongoing professional learning that is supported by coaching at the implementation level. And if you want to see an example of that, that I think has been incredible to watch, it's been with our literacy rollout in the K-6. It's been very much that way, and coaching, both our PLC coaches as well as our ILCs have been knee-deep in that and more. And that's what made it work. Because you can do all you can, but that support at the building level is so important.
Okay. And then just the last two are kind of more considerations. So if we think about our programs, things like dual language immersion or advanced learning labs, those are kind of the big programs that we have in our schools. There are some considerations that come with that. When we talk about school size or teaming size, we know that in a dual language model right now, how the state has it, there are 2 teachers dedicated to that program. So we know if we're looking at a school and it says there's 3 teachers in a grade level and they're a dual language school, 2 of those teachers are only for that dual immersion program, and then we come into conflict with some of these other criteria. That also speaks to potentially different levels of support that schools may need as far as building community, because often our dual language immersion pulls out of area students, and how do you create that connection when they're not that neighborhood school? Kids are going to school with kids that aren't their neighbors, that they're not going to see regularly. So our principals have that challenge of how do we build that. The other part with ALL and DLI to be aware of is access. So as we consider where those programs are located, if we place them all in one location, we're cutting off access for students that might want to participate if their parents can't transport them. So there's a consideration there as well. We want to make sure that all of our students have an equitable opportunity, so where we locate and how we consolidate can have an impact on what they may access, just because both parents' work schedules don't align with picking up, or there's one student in a program, the other siblings are not. We've now got parents that are trying to juggle 2 elementary schools, plus then if they have students at the secondary level, there's some real impact that happens for our families on that side. So just some considerations there. And then I would say dual language more than ALL, because you have 2 kids in there. When we talk about enrollment a little bit later, that school size matters a bit more. I would say needs to be a little bit more on the higher side, just to provide those other criteria like access and collaborative opportunities in those grade levels. So that's kind of programs very quickly, and we can get into other details with it as we move along. And then another consideration is just the facilities side. You know, we need to be aware of square footage. Are we consolidating schools and then having to bring in outdoor classrooms and trailers? Okay, so maybe some schools don't have the same physical capacity as others. The same with lunchroom space, gym space, those are all square footage considerations. The age of the building, just something to be aware of. Are we going to need to upgrade and do renovations, or are we consolidating a school that is newer that might have more upgraded facilities for the kids and the staff? And then things like safe walking routes, transportation. You know, if we're consolidating, are we providing more busing or how we look at those boundaries, and then just neighborhood proximity. So all of those are just considerations on the facilities, the physical side, and the access for our schools. Any questions about either of those? Okay, so then we'll maybe just give you a quick overview of what's in the packet, and then, okay, I just want to be mindful of our schedule and time. So as we look at these criteria, we look at kind of the options. One of the things always at the back of my mind is this going to have a lasting impact? Or will we make it and it's robust for a year, 2 years, and then we're back into a similar boat? So one of the very first things that you'll see, and there's several of them by year, are the enrollment projections for our TSD elementary schools between now and 2030. So you can see by each of the schools by grade level, based on the head counts and then the projections that they have. So we can kind of see the trends of if they maintain how they currently are, what we're looking at.
So each page is a year.
Each page is a year. So just for you guys to consider and to be aware of. The next one is a different looking spreadsheet that's got some different colors that looks like that right there. That is an overview of out of area student percentages for each of our elementary schools. So I'll walk you through the top boxes because it's going to look the same. So the very first column, the farthest to the left, for our elementary schools, those are out-of-area students that are not affiliated with a dual language immersion or an advanced learning lab class. They are just out of area to the school. Some of them could be siblings to kids in those programs. Other families just elect to go to a different school. The middle program, and you'll see there's only certain schools that are there, are the students that are out of area to the programs that are located in those elementary schools. So you can see the percentage and the overall. And then the very last column combines both of those. So you can see the overall percentage of out of area that exists within those buildings as well. So for you guys just to be aware, when we look at their student populations, there are different percentages of student enrollment that are out of area versus in boundary. And then I threw our secondary friends a bone and put our junior high, middle school, and our high school out of area counts down below as well. So you can see the full district schools there.
And just on that graphic alone, just, and I'm sure our principals here can speak to this. This is a hard reality sometimes, because you don't have either enough room, and you want to bring the siblings of said person that might be in one of your programs, and so it becomes a very delicate balancing act, and if we're about making sure we provide families the best opportunity in our schools, that we figure that out. But it is a very much a current reality, and as we look at robust schools, hopefully something we can consider. And we did also, the graphic before there is about what schools have what programs. Is the graphic before the one on that page that shows just what we have going on each school. So as Katie's mentioned, that's going to be a consideration.
Any questions about those? Because it's going to take you a minute to digest it and come up with your questions. So I'm really good with silence and wait time if you want to read, or we can give you an overview of the rest and then see what questions you have.
Is there an optimal out of area number? I mean, does it just each percentage present different
It just presents different
scenarios?
But a consideration is most of these students will live in proximity. We have a couple of our language programs that they drive from Saratoga, but that is a minimal number. But we're pulling enrollment from other boundary schools in Timpanogos. So we look at some of those percentages, and those could be students that the enrollment might be different at their neighborhood school if they weren't going out of area. So I don't know that there's an optimal number, but just a consideration as we look at that. And we can see, and I didn't provide it here, but we can see, and Jason has it, where you can see where those students actually are coming from by school. So if that's of interest to you, we can get you down to that detail.
Or the opposite. If you look at a certain school, you can see where they're going to from that boundary.
Right.
Also.
That was the other.
We do have that.
There's also the idea when I was out west, like here, louder without the mic.
They can't hear you online.
I know. When I was out west, there was a different problem where the in-boundary community was so involved in the program that there was no space for out-of-area students. So if you're talking about access for a larger community and you're going to have a special program, you have to allow for the out-of-area. And then you have to address the sibling situation, which I think for years it was like, oh, we don't split up families, you know, we bring them all together. And now I have a kindergarten wait list if they have siblings in DLI, but I can't accept them because I won't get additional FTE until August when I know if I'm going to actually have space for them. So, you know, there's kind of a fine balance.
Okay. And then I'll talk you through what we call staffing sheets, so you kind of have an idea. I'm going to have you go to the very back set, those last 2 pages. Yes, Shirley.
Just as we're turning there, just looking, where do the life skill classes, are those the special classes?
The special classes.
Those are
And
called?
we didn't delineate between life skills and autism.
And autism?
But they are just special ed special classes that
Okay.
are listed on there, yes.
Okay.
On this one?
On the, yes, the one on the top where it says those. And there are some we didn't bring up, but some implications as far as robust schooling, providing a variety of mainstreaming opportunities for our students. If we have more teachers on a grade level, we have more meaningful access to instruction and different teaching styles, which allows our students to, again, thrive in those classrooms. So thinking about our students with IEPs that are in those general ed classes with additional services, as well as those that in their placement don't have the regular access listed because they need additional support, but we want to mainstream and push in as much as possible for those students. And we need teachers in a grade level team for that to be really, truly successful. Okay, so then looking at those last 2, I'm going to explain kind of how we look at it. So this is one school. The top is the specialty allocation.
Which one are we at, 500 to 600?
The very last page, 8 to 850. And these are all schools in Alpine School District. So this is current realities for buildings, and it's not just Timpanogos School District elementaries. I just pulled a sampling.
Because we don't have any 800.
You don't. They don't exist down here currently for this coming school year.
Isn't parks, trail sites
Oh,
big?
They're a little bit bigger than the 850. Yeah. So I just did kind of a range to sample.
Thanks, Susan.
That's a great one. So maybe starting at the bottom where it says the school allocation. So how we read this, on the far right bottom, there's the overview. So you can see how many FTE are allocated. I think Valen's trying to pull it up. Isn't his family beautiful? What a lovely picture. Yeah.
Ask Joe.
Where you can see, there's Charlie, his darling, cute granddaughter, what was allocated based on their enrollment. And then you can see in the allocation column that's white how many teachers per grade level based on the ratio for each grade level are funded. So this school has 5 kindergarten, 4 in all of the rest. And kind of how that falls in different class sizes. And I picked this one because it's really actually lovely and rarely happens this way. So it's kind of a nice one to look at. If you go up to the top page and look at their specialty allocation, you can see what was allocated and then how that principal has desired to create that, and then the total of how much that will cost. Now there's a red number, meaning for what they're wanting to do, they're over their allocation, and so that principal is dedicating school funds to pay for that, to make that happen for that many. And they are a Beverly Taylor Sorensen Arts School as well. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's jump back up to the first option that will be a little bit more interesting to look at.
It's not viable.
Yeah, the 3 to 4. So if we look at that, the total students and the allocation, When you see a 0.5, 1.5, 1.5, that means that that would be a split class in there based on their student enrollment. So the initial had 2 splits, their third and fourth and fifth and sixth classes. You can tell in the notes this principal chose to pay for 1 FTE out of trust lands. Now, one of the questions we get is, why wouldn't they qualify for additional district FTE? Because we do allocate those. There are some times where to dissolve a split, it creates a class of 10, or it creates a class of 13, and that's not a sustainable funding model, so they wouldn't qualify yet. So principals then choose, we're not going to do this, and they do different models. I know, Jenny, I've done it. We've done middle school models where they teach certain subjects, and you've got kids moving all over, and our principals get very creative to try and minimize it, but sometimes we just end up with split classes. So that's that number. So that's kind of how you read it. And then again, with specialty, they're trying to offer 3 offerings. That means that she's also having to pay for 0.7785 of an FTE. So I would guess that is all of her TSSA budget to pay for just that staff. And so then when we talk about that flexibility to customize additional support, she has fewer options to be able to do that because of that enrollment. So I'll give you guys a minute maybe to look through and see what questions you have at the different sizes. We are also happy to come back and get into the details or look at some other options with this as you go.
Speak on this one, Katie, the specialty?
Yeah.
Speak to the specialty on the 300 to 400 one.
Yeah, so they, based on the 12 FTE that they qualify for based on student enrollment, that's 0.76 specialty that they qualify for. This school values specialty, so they're trying to offer computer science, PE, and art. And you can see that one of those teachers is an hourly teacher, so it's not a contracted teacher to be able to cover it. But in order to do the amount of time that they're wanting to provide their teachers 3 specialty options, that puts them 0.7785 over what they're allocated at the 0.76, which means in order to do that, this principal is, I would say, likely paying for all of that hourly teacher out of a school account, as well as part of the partial FTEs as well. Yes.
Where does the BTS grant part go?
Yeah, so BTS, based on your enrollment size, anything below 8.
This is an area I have responsibility for, so it basically is anything that's above, I'm going to forget the number all of a sudden off the top of my head. It's 700 and up is 0.75, and how the grant works from the state, they pay the bigger portion, and then the school, if they qualify for that 0.75, lowest we go is 0.5, because it has to be contracted again, because we're trying to have high quality educators in that position. So, but it is a cheaper way to get an FTE, because you're not paying for the full FTE, you're paying for a 0.3 of it. So it changes that a little bit.
So can you look at this page and walk us through walk us through what it looks like on this page?
So this looks like, I can't remember what the numbers were here. 300, okay, 300, okay. So this is a 0.5. Not anything below is a 0.5. So they get 75.
From the state, they're getting 0.5.
Yeah, from the state 0.5. And that's what they qualify for. And the state pays 0.3 of it, and then the school picks up the 0.2 of it.
And then how does that 0.5 on the left side, on the red part and the other, how does the 0.5?
So it's the school part, the 0.2 is part of that 1.5385 used FTE, so it feeds into that. So if we look at the second column, David, the top 2 are that lovely salmon-y color, and then you can see the total and then FTE used. The used is the total of the BTS school FTE column, as well as anything in that FTE equivalent column, and those total together, and then subtract from the given, which is why we get the negative 0.7785.
They had to buy additional because they bought an extra teacher.
Yes.
So they have to pay for additional. If you decide to dissolve a split and hire another teacher using trust lands or something, you also have to pay for that additional specialty because that teacher still needs prep. And so that's an additional budgeting item.
Yes. Does that make sense, David? We can walk you through
Almost.
specifics. Almost. And like I said, these are
We're good. I'll talk to Valen or someone after, you or Valen
Yeah,
after,
and we
or one of these guys.
Yeah, and we can come back and get into more specifics with these, but I wanted to give you kind of a general sense, knowing also that right now for next year, we're still watching enrollment, still, seeing if they qualify for FTEs. But based on different enrollment size, you'll also find a school that's probably in the mid-sixes, close to 7, that doesn't have splits or similar things, but they also don't have programs and other things that complicate in there, but they're still paying for some specialties as well. So we wanted to give you a variety. Yes, Ada?
Can you just remind me that formula for arriving at how many specialty FTEs you have? So one FTE
Is 0.07 specialty. That's how it's funded currently.
Is that a district policy to fund it that way, or is that part
That's
of
a
FTE?
great question for Jason.
It is district?
Yes, it's what Katie was saying earlier, that 2 hours a week per teacher for prep time. So, and it's combined to all be the same now for all elementaries. When there used to be traditional schools and extended day, the two were different. So the extended day had this model, but the traditional even had less of the specialty time. It was 1 hour per week per FTE rather than the 2.
So that is something that as we move forward and we say, looking even at the class size ratios, because there's not a cap from the state. However, there's a certain amount that it's just funded at that we, for sustainability purposes, need class sizes a certain way. And you can see at the bottom, if we're looking at the school, down at the very low, it says district
What page?
target ratio.
What page?
On the one that looks like this, down at the bottom of each of those squares, you can see a district target ratio, and that's kind of the funding ratio that we're looking at per class for each of those elementary schools. And
Number of students.
yes, so like kindergarten is 23 because, they're 5 and they don't remember their names half the time and they need more support because a class of then, 29 in 3rd grade, that would be more difficult with kindergarten students versus 3rd graders a little bit more independent. They can do more and engage. So those ratios are different as well, which would be a consideration of, do we maintain those ratios? Do we adjust that? Do we change specialty? And the prep part that students engage in, obviously rolling forward with Alpine's policies and agreements, that would be in place, but that could be something that we relook at as we build our robust elementary schools as well.
Can I ask another question? So I was just wondering, I know that on the high school level, there's something called a comprehensive high school, right? And that means that it has everything, it is offering everything that the kids need to really have a good education in high school. What would it take to have a comprehensive elementary school models that we just tried to fund that way? Is that the same as a robust elementary school?
Yes, these criteria I think would get us to that type of a model so that students, teachers are all having that similar base, knowing that certain programs, not every school will have the same programming, but if we can, again, going back to access, make sure we have enough so that our schools can have that for all students. But yes, these criteria would be like that comprehensive high school model.
Robust.
Yeah.
And Grace, I love that question because actually just comparing and contrasting the student enrollment 5 to 600 DLI versus the 550 to 650 regular, it's really interesting. It's not always about size, right? Because those are almost the same sizes, but if you look at the DLI one, it misses quite a few of those criteria because you end up with the gen ed being too small, one class. Whereas in the regular, you end up with 3 teachers, which starts to hit those 3 to 4 teachers, you know, in a collaborative team, and it just works better in this model versus this model. So sometimes it's not truly about just size, which is why this whole boundary study, it's so important that we set this criteria first, because it doesn't necessarily mean we're trying to get to 700 for every school. Some schools will need 800 plus if it's DLI or whatever, and some schools might be just fine smaller, right? And so really it's about trying to get this criteria with any of those.
I waited to ask my question till after you guys were presenting. On specialized staff support, so in some of our, as we've been doing these vision tours and meeting with a lot of the administrators, would you, and I want to know from the peanut gallery as well, so specialized,
The expert gallery.
our expert gallery, specialized staff support, counselor, currently ASD does a half-time counselor per elementary school. In my opinion, in my experience with my children, a full-time counselor in each elementary school, in my mind, would be a robust, help with a robust, thriving school. Additionally, having an assistant principal at every school would be a must-have. Does anybody want to speak to that? I think there's...
I don't want to say I don't love my assistant principal. This is my first year with an assistant principal, but I have also had a TSA and a TAA, and from my needs standpoint, that is sufficient. And the difference is they don't get paid for summer days. I mean, they get 10 like a coach or something. And so I don't know what the cost differential is, but for 2 of us administrators to stay busy all summer in a small school is sometimes tricky. Whereas I definitely need the help during the school year, but during the summer I'm good. And so when you're talking about salaries and contracts and all that kind of stuff, in a smaller school, I think that's sufficient. But absolutely they need someone with them in the school year.
Yes, and what if you had a larger school? Would an assistant principal
And a TAA?
well, I'm just wondering, would they be able to be meaningfully contributing during the summer even? Or not?
I still think, as an assistant at a bigger school, I probably didn't need to work every day.
Okay.
So maybe 2 AAs versus an AP and a TA. One other thing. Yes. Okay. Yes. We love our acronyms. Are you guys okay if I do that?
Yeah.
A TAA is a teacher on administrative assignment. A TSA is a teacher on special assignment, and then an AP is an assistant principal. To me, I would argue for a TAA over a TSA because a TAA can do observations, evaluations, suspensions, can do everything that an administrator can do. So I would say, please, if we're going to go on the lower end, do a TAA over a TSA. TSAs haven't really existed in elementary for a while. One other thing I wanted to say about specialty, I'm old enough that back when I first started teaching, we didn't have specialty teachers. I taught my kids computers, I taught my kids art, I taught my kids PE. The content exists from the state that kids should be learning those things. So when you're talking about a comprehensive or a robust elementary, all of those things should be taught. This is kind of our another gift to elementary is that we're going to have someone else teach that for you so you can concentrate on other things, and that's also going to be your prep. That's not a law, that's just how we've done it, and I think that works really well. I think when you're looking at the contracted and the hourly, I have a 0.5 contracted that she's been contracted for a while, so I want to keep her contracted. But for a 0.5 to be busy at my school, that means they have computer science 2 times a week, which is great. No one's going to argue with that. With hourly, there's also levels where you have to say, you can't just say, oh, I need like 8.25 of an hourly contract. You have to go from a 7.5 or a 10 or a 13.5. And I don't know, Katie and Valen could probably speak to more of why that is. That can make it tricky because my hourly Also, I'm going to argue for hourly teachers. My PE teacher, I don't need her to be certified. I don't need her to have a special endorsement. She's phenomenal. She's hourly. She likes it that way. I think that's, yeah, the flexibility with that. But for what we need, the breaking point, I have to give her 10 hours, where really I only need 9. So that's an extra hour that I don't want to say forced. I love her. I'll keep her all 10 hours, but I do have to, I could save money if I was able to only hire her at 9. Does that make sense? Can you speak to the counselor? Oh, counselor, yeah, I wanted to say something about that too. Every elementary school has a half-time counselor unless they pay for an additional one. If we want to go to full-time counselors, that's great, but if we're going to double the size of the school and make it a full-time counselor, that's the same ratio. Does that make sense? Like, I have a half-time counselor in my school. I have about 400 students. And I have 17 classes that she can hit. If we were to go to an 800 school model and make it a full-time, then you're doubling the number of kids and the number of teachers. So I feel like it's the same. Yeah. So big schools right now are going to say, yeah, we feel that strain as a bigger school with only a half-time counselor. So.
Well, and if we think about comprehensive, there are things counselors do, there are things school psychologists do. That would be an area I would say, are there ways that we can consider those folks in the caseloads, because they have specialized training and behavior supports that our counselors don't, but also leveraging our social worker, school-based therapists, because they also do different types of supports for students. So then when we consider that, are we building a team to be able to provide the diverse supports? Because I think often our school counselors are carrying a lot more, that if we had enough of those other staff that could be available that are more specialized in certain areas, you could build a team to meet broader needs more, I wouldn't say effectively, but maybe in a more timely way, or spread the load. So there's some nuances there, but that's definitely an area that I feel like is needed, especially then if we're thinking about our more impacted Title I type schools, that all of these criteria still apply, but then we go back to tailoring, and we know that kids are often coming in those buildings needing more support out of the gate. So the end goal for them is still the same, but there's higher transiency rate, often a higher concentration of language learners, often there's more trauma that comes with students. So all of these components that we're talking about, universally it shows up really kind of in your face sometimes when they're not present and they don't have that support in Title I. And those programs, that's part of why they have additional funding to address that. But I still feel like that criteria, if we're considering even our Title I schools, still need those support areas in addition to what the title program designation brings to them as well. Does that make sense? Okay, other questions for us? We are over time. We want to be mindful of that. But we want feedback. If there's additional things you're wondering about, we wanted to give you just a first pass and kind of some big ideas to consider as criteria, knowing that there are some details within each of those that we can get more into as we go.
And just to bring it full circle from where we started, we have to, all of us are here in this room for one reason: what is best for kids and what's best for our teachers. And that as we look at this, there's lots of, as you can tell, variables, but certainly some things I think we can get creative, a little more nimble as a smaller district to do. And we did not come here with this being the solution, just so you know. This is just our thinking. We want, obviously, your feedback, and what are things are we missing that you see, and as you ask questions, this helps us dig deeper so we can come up with the best criteria, because we should have a criteria. We have to, and we owe it to those kids and those teachers. David, did you have something?
Yeah. How much of this is research-based that you came up with? How much of it is it just great minds thinking about it?
Well, you go back to some of the meta-analyses, and we know that teachers are the number one learning factor. They have the biggest influence. So what are the things that our teachers need to be able to provide those best instructional practices in classrooms, be able to provide, we know feedback is a really high leverage strategy for students, right? And if teachers are feeling overloaded because that is a new instructional routine, are we able to manage some of those instructional practices coming back to specialized staff? Are we having things like coaches that are helping to build our capacity for those for those practices as well? And then looking at some of those others are just access points to allow our teachers to really get in and do the work with our students. Some of the questions or concerns that I have heard is higher school enrollment means larger class sizes. I've heard that as a question. My experience actually is that you have a few more kids in the building, more teachers on a grade level, and those class sizes drop because as you have kids move in, you have more places to slot them in. And then that teacher who builds that classroom learning culture, sets up those routines, is not every other week having to redo, reteach, stop the momentum because they want those kids to feel connected and a part. So there are some things as well when we look at those sizes. I don't know that there have been exact studies on robust elementary schools. We are happy to dig into that and see. But I do know that just the instructional practices and how do we create the conditions and a system to support our teachers in their learning and the best practices around teaching, which then drives student outcomes, I think is the approach that we've taken with that.
I think we can look at neighboring school districts and look at the decisions that they've made concerning boundaries, school size, proximity, and sometimes the trade-off for doing what your immediate public reaction is that you do not have the funds to hire good teachers. You're compromising on what you're able to pay your teachers, and therefore you get the next layer of quality. So I think that's something that we'll need to consider.
Okay, thank you so very much. This is just the very beginning. We have scratched the surface, and so this conversation is just starting. I'm going to turn the time over to Board Vice President Sterling Hilton. We're going to talk about, this is going to roundtable with our board as far as our committee frameworks and how we're setting up our criteria.
All right, so I just want to take a few minutes to share our current thinking around the process for this boundary study. Two things are going to be happening. One, the process in terms of how we're going to progress through to a final decision. First step in the process is we started already today. We want to establish criteria for which we are going to be making decisions. And since it's a all district, all school boundary study, we need to engage in conversations and discussions around the same. We did it today around elementaries. We need to do it around secondaries, including not just the high schools, but the junior highs as well. So that's our first step in the process, is that we've got to establish that criteria. After we've established that criteria, then we need to apply that criteria and do some initial thinking to come up with some possibilities. And then from those possibilities, then we've got to go to the next step. The third step would be, okay, what are our proposals? Those are at a minimum of that process towards making a decision. Does that make sense? Criteria, initial thinking, proposals. Oh yeah, that's my second process. So that's one process towards the decision. At every step, a stage, if you will, of this process, we are going to go through the following. We're going to involve ourselves. We've got to be thinking about it. We're going to then add to our thinking with educators. That's principals especially, but also district level individuals. They've got to be then part of the mix. And then after they're part of the mix, then we've got to have a touch point with our public and our communities. Because each one of those different stakeholders have different perspectives, different expertise. They're going to be bringing different ideas and thoughts to the table. And our job is to consider all of those. So we've got to figure out what we think, hence a study session like today. Then we've got to bring in educators and get their take on what's happening. We've got to have that in the consideration. And then we've got to bring in our community, our parents and the larger community, to get their take on it. So we see that at the criteria level, we're going to have a touch point with educators and with our community. And when we get to initial thinking, we're going to have touch points with those. Does that make sense? So contacting the stakeholders is going to happen at every stage of this process. Because at the end, we've got to be at a place where no one's surprised at the decisions that are going to be made.
The first is, who does that include? Just us as a board, or does that include our assistant superintendents? Step number one.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. So on every committee, Joe, what did you say? You and Jason, and
then it would be on the committees. Initially, we want Jason and Dave. They have access to the tool where they can start looking at those types of options. But also Tyler Bigu, who is new to our team, is going to be absolutely crucial in the communicating, both internally and externally. And then also principals, because we're going to make better decisions about final criteria as well as later in the process. So, and then board members as well.
And Katie or Peter.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, thank
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Yes.
And the timeline is kind of laid over on top of this to make sure we're starting and ending correctly.
well, yes, and to that end, I mean, that's why we're opening the boundary study today, right?
Our intention is to go above and beyond the mandated timeline.
Right, so the mandated timeline then says, hey, you need a minimum of 60 days, or you need a minimum of 90 days, or something like that. Is that right? I mean, remembering those days, right? And we're gonna do more. So it's like we're opening it today so that we can engage and do our process, right? And it's gonna take more than 60 days, and it's gonna take more than 90 days. So we are starting it now so that we can engage in this process, so that in the end, with our decisions, we all understand, and hopefully there's consensus around the decisions that we're making, because we've got clear criteria, and it's the best, and those are the best solutions, because we've considered all of our stakeholders' perspectives, experiences, and that sort of thing. Not that they won't be competing, we'll have decisions to make, but we'll have considered all of those perspectives and viewpoints. That's the goal.
So you're saying that on each of these, the established criteria, the apply and do initial possibilities and thinking, and then the third one is proposals, that we start with ourselves talking, and then with teachers and principals, just principals. When do we bring in community?
Okay.
So that's the third one.
So we have.
So
yeah,
not
so
until
we have-
proposals?
No.
Okay.
That's all in criteria.
In each
That's
stage, you
all in
will-
criteria.
Each stage, we've got to involve all of our stakeholders.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, so to that
So far,
end,
he's only talking about criteria.
Okay.
Oh, we're only
Right.
talking criteria.
we're only talking
Only
about
criteria, and we will bring in,
And, right,
okay,
and
community. Great.
we're bringing in community. Our intent is we've penciled in some ideas
To do cluster
to
meetings.
do cluster meetings
By high school.
at the end of this
For
month or
criteria.
early
Beginning of June.
Beginning of June.
And that's just on the criteria, because we can't even get to initial proposals until we know what the criteria are.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I totally expect that we will get some important information through their experiences from our communities and parents. What are the criteria? What should we be considering as we're making these decisions? Does that make sense?
I'm wondering if there's a way, I know we talk about community as parents, but I think it needs to be also cities and people who aren't necessarily have kids in the school. And maybe,
And I think that's our job as a board, is to touch those people and be able to get their input and let them know, hey, this is happening, and
so come to the
we
meeting
want,
type
yeah,
thing.
yeah, and let them know where our thinking is going and get their thoughts.
Okay. Well, I'm just wondering if it wouldn't be good to use our city government as resources in getting that information out, either by their websites or
Absolutely.
their committees and community committees.
Yeah, definitely, and that will come in the more as we get along in that the implementation, or what did you say?
Well, no, I was going to say, even in this criteria, I think the criteria is crucial. And so, yes, we need and should be communicating with the cities that, hey, these cluster meetings are coming up, and it's for this particular purpose, and all members of our community are invited and even welcome to come and help us think about what are the criteria for robust, thriving elementary schools.
Well, both, because at the
And
cluster meetings we're
secondary.
going to be touching
That's
on
true as
both.
both.
So we have it penciled in first week of June to be able to do that. So we'll utilize and we're not limiting that. We're going to ask our principals to please invite so we can have representation from each school, but that doesn't mean we're limiting it to that. Also, these will be open public meetings, and so we'll do all that we need to for OPMA to have all of us there, if whoever wants to attend, as far as board members, each of those 4. So then, yeah, we'll be listening. It's kind of almost like a listening tour, but we are focusing on criteria. We're not going to get into specifics. We feel it's very important for us to do this in a proper order. So this isn't going to be a meeting where you come and say, "Oh, save this, save this school," or "Why are you thinking about this?" It's like, no, we are focusing on what do we want our schools to look like in the Timpanogos School District. That is what we're focusing this on. So hopefully people that are passionate and have thoughts about that will come and share their thoughts.
May I ask, in my mind, this looks similar to the vision tour. We take, this draft that we just got, what robust elementary schools look like, from Katie and Valen, and then that helps spark conversation in our communities and our educators.
That's correct. And by the time we get to our communities, that draft that we just received here is going to look different,
yes.
because we
will have gone through
have to
committee, yes.
engage with it, and then we're also going to engage with our educators. All due respect, they are educators, but other educators, right? And then that's what we will also then be presenting. So it'll be a revised version of that, but to say, yeah, this is our best thinking. Respond to it.
Add
Help
to
us
it.
think. Help us think beyond our perspectives. What else is important to you?
Thank you.
Yeah.
And really, the recording of this meeting is a first step, really. Any of us can direct our public to this meeting for their first exposure to that discussion. Is it premature to say what our date, our goal, as far as a date to conclude? Are we going to say that at this point, or should we? We don't know.
I would just mention, we'll go by the
Legal
law,
mandate.
of course.
Yeah.
But,
Yes.
I think in some of our conversations we've had earlier, so that's what's informing me right now, is that there was a lot of angst with some in the past how ASD has done school closures, and there was an ask for some decisions by December. So in my mind, and that's just me, because that hasn't been discussed as a board, and that is something that we can discuss, would be, that's what I'm just throwing out there, by December, so that gives time for, if there are consolidations and closures, that we can celebrate those schools. We can celebrate and have it be this, try to make it as wonderful of an experience as it can be, and give those teachers and the principals time to make decisions and make plans.
So I guess one final comment I want to make is that it's really important that we realize that everything's on the table and no decisions have been made. I mean, that's why we're doing the process that we're doing it. Everything's on the table and no decisions ever made. And I think we've got to, in my mind, we've got to approach it that way in order to optimize our outcome. So,
Okay, is there any other comments about this? We did it in 10 minutes, we had 45 minutes, but there will be continued conversation.
Yes, it's all one.
The last item on our study session agenda is discussion on board governance topics. And we kind of started this at our retreat, but I don't think we ever got anything. So we just wanted to talk a little bit about the communication as board members. I know we've all been receiving emails from constituents, and so I open a discussion about this, but I would request as board president, if any responses are sent, that I'm just CC'd on it, so I'm aware of what's going on, and any conversations that are happening. Also, just a reminder that to keep our view up here as opposed to getting involved in things that are happening at a school level, it's appropriate for us to contact a principal if we're contacted by a constituent regarding an issue at a school, and that's not our what's the word? Yeah, it's not our purview. That's not our lane. Thank you, Dave.
Stay in our lanes.
David?
Do we
Yeah, I'm
even
gonna say-
contact a principal at this point because it is not our
Yeah,
district?
it's not our district. I think it would be appropriate maybe just to give them a heads up that you had been contacted by this parent. If it is something you feel is egregious, the next thing would be going to a supervisor. And I think Katie and Dave both are a resource for us to reach out to. That's why they are our staff, and we can contact them if there's an issue. And I'm sure that they would be happy to counsel us on the way to handle it. But yeah, so is there any discussion on that?
I assume the same is true, like you would like to be copied in, and I think Dr. Jensen, you would also like to be copied in. So the two of you, when we do know that that an email comes in and, for example, it has to do with literacy and elementary literacy, and we know, who we've hired to cover that, do you still want us to send it to you and then you send it to that person rather than us doing that directly?
That may be something we want to talk about. I think there's a difference between what someone contacts you about, right? If someone contacts you about a student discipline issue or even a personnel issue, and I'd love feedback on this, I would recommend asking first to the principal, or asking to that constituent, have you contacted the principal? Because I would guess 90+% of those issues can be taken care of well by the principal. Does that make sense? And then, but you can also direct them to say, and if the principal doesn't meet your needs, then I would refer them to whoever supervises.
I guess I'm thinking more of professionals that I've attended NSBA, and when you go to the National School Boards Association, you make contacts with a lot of providers, and they contact you. So, but I'm not in a decision-making capacity about a lot of these things. So anyway, I'm going to refer them to you.
Okay, that's what you're talking about.
right,
So
because
I thought you were
that's
asking
different than a
about-
constituent, right?
Yeah.
That's more of a vendor.
Yeah, it is.
And I would be wise. There's going to be a lot of people trying to sell you things, right? And so I would distinguish between what's worth passing on. But there are other constituent complaints that. So for example, I think both of you are on the policy committee. If there's a constituent that contacts you about a policy issue, once we get our committees up and running, the committee would probably be the best place to take that, those types of things. Yeah, right. So that we know what's going on. But I would, and I don't know if there's other things, but specifically student or personnel issues, I would always ask first, have you contacted the principal? If they say yes and I didn't get a satisfactory answer, I would then say, and especially in this year, it's a little bit awkward because technically they're not our schools yet. So I would say until July of 27, technically we should be going through Alpine School District, but we have...
Not just technically.
Well,
we
yeah.
should be going through Alpine School District.
Absolutely. So, and so then I would say, so Katie and Michelle are going to be transitioning east and west now, so soon. So really, it would be in the next, until there's an official change somewhere else in Alpine's structure. For now, it would be Dave or Katie, right, depending on if it's secondary or elementary. That makes it easy. It's actually better for you because it puts you in a weird position if you're in the middle of a very specific student discipline or teacher personnel type situation.
Yeah, so that's actually the point I wanted to make too, is that it's not our lane, first of all, but also if one of us is doing above and beyond what our lane is, then the others are maybe looked at as not as involved or don't care. And so it's important for us for Unity as a board, I believe, for us to be consistent in this with respond to a constituent. We try to, because we have constituents that are reaching out about board level things. So that would be appropriate to bring to a board meeting or bring to Sterling and myself and say, hey, what do you guys think? And is this something that we
Discuss in public.
Yeah. Yeah. So any other thoughts?
Just a couple other thoughts about that as well. Often, if it's to the point where a constituent is contacting a board member, those supervisors are already going to know that situation fairly well. And so I think that's also helpful to know. And they're very good at navigating those things.
And can I just add, I have found that it's helpful if I explicitly invite whomever I'm interacting with as a constituent is to invite them to suspend judgment, because in any complicated situation, and if they're concerned enough that they're bringing it to my attention, and I've had that, then there's some kind of complexity there. I always invite them to suspend judgment until they get all the story, and tell them that that's what I intend and try to do as well. Is that, hey, I'm not asking you to suspend concern, but I am inviting you to suspend judgment, because that then allows, hopefully, for some learning to take place on all sides.
And just one last thing too, if I think there's a culture that gets built, if a patron starts to think the only way I can make something happen is through a board member, that's not a good space to be in, right? We have administrators, we have all the folks who are there and can address these things, and it's more effective if they go straight to the source rather than going through you, because so that's just something to think about as well.
Okay. Grace, really quick, then we have.
Just wanted to say, in this little best practices book they gave us, it gave a nod to Alpine. The Alpine School District School Board has a board handbook that outlines clear expectation, policies, and norms relating to how a board will interact with the superintendent and community. I have yet to find that when I've looked for it, but if we want to look at that and kind of go over it, I'm happy to.
Yeah, and our goal is to be able to have this at each study session, is to have a governance topic. So if there's anything that you're concerned about that we should address, please let us know.
I would just ask, especially talking about myself personally, if I ever get out of my lane, if Dr. Jensen or Board President Lyman would please address that straight up right with me.
Will do, David. Okay, the time is, I guess it's almost about 5:40. We're going to end our work session. We will reconvene at 6 o'clock for our board meeting.
I don't know where that is either on the website. I've looked.
So we're going to begin our board meeting. We're going to begin our board meeting.
I don't get anything outside of.
There's some inconsistency here.
But I didn't.
We're starting our board meeting now, and we invite you to take your seats. We will start with our Pledge of Allegiance that will be led by Jill Davis, after which we'll have an inspirational thought by Ashley Belknap.
All right, if everyone can please stand. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
My name is Ashley. I teach at Orem Junior High history for the last 18 years. And for the last 5 years, I've been the social studies content specialist. So my inspirational thought is history themed. As we prepare to celebrate America's 250th birthday this year, I've been thinking about what has allowed our nation to endure triumphs, challenges, disagreements, and change. Our democracy has never depended simply on documents or institutions. It depends on people, informed, thoughtful, engaged citizens who are willing to learn, think critically, and work together for something greater than themselves. This is why education matters so deeply. George Washington said, "Promote then as an object of primary importance institutions for the general diffusion of knowledge." Even at the founding of our nation, there was an understanding that a successful democracy could only survive if its people were educated. Today, that responsibility feels even more important in a world filled with misinformation, constant noise, and our schools, our schools help students learn how to evaluate sources, think critically, ask good questions, and seek truth. As educators and community leaders, we have a responsibility to help students become thoughtful citizens who can navigate these challenges with wisdom and integrity. Every day in our schools, students learn how to participate in discussions, consider different perspectives, solve problems, and contribute to their communities. Those skills are essential to the future of a thriving democracy. As we approach this historic milestone, I hope we remember that one of the greatest investments we can make in America's next 250 years is the investment we make in our students today.
Thank you so much for that, Ashley and Jill. We now have time for community comments, and we had 0 people sign up for community comments, so we will move on to the next item on our agenda. That is the approval of minutes. So the minutes were sent out to the board prior to this meeting, I believe on Friday, from Karen, and so I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes that were sent.
I motion that we approve the minutes as sent.
I have a motion by Board Member Sorensen. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Oh, we got a double second from Board Member Fugel. Okay, second by Board Member Fugel. Is there any discussion on our minutes? Any questions or clarifications? Michelle?
Sometime I want a tutorial on how to read the finances. Like, yeah, just
That's the
becoming
next thing.
becoming
This is
more
just minutes.
This
We'll
is
go
just
to the
minutes. Okay, got it. Okay,
expenditures.
I'll save that comment for later.
Okay. Okay, any other comments? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Next, we have the approval of our expenditure report and claims. I'll turn the time over to Dr. Jensen.
Okay, in your board documents is the full report for expenditure and claim and report claims. Jason Sundberg, any comments you want to make on that?
Thanks, Dr. Jensen. So looking at this, that first page is with the kind of maroon and then blue is, oh, it's black and white. Black and white. Thanks for giving me the color one, Karen. Okay, the black and white. So it says financial report, Fund 12. So for the rest of the time until July 1st of 27, it'll be Fund 12 because it's part of Alpine School District's books. And this includes the $60 per student allocation. So the part there, the other sources and uses that's shown in red, the 1.498, sorry, not in red. The bottom line, other sources and uses, the negative number, the 1.498 is the amount. It's the $60 per student plus other credits that have come in with compensating for other districts receiving, like in the superintendent pay for the other two. So it's about the 1.5 million. And then each of these, where it says Board of Education, Legal Services, Superintendent, these are just the different categories that have been set up. And this is what Alpine's board report for the finance looks like with many other funds. This one that we have just has Fund 12 and Fund 36, which will become for us Fund 10 and Fund 32 in the future. So the bottom line there on the receipts and expended, so far since December, 194,519 has been expended, and you can see the different categories there. If you go to the detailed report that's behind that, and if you went to the total of each program, so when we're looking at this page here, the first one there, it has account numbers. So that top line says Board of Education. So when I'm talking about the program, it's the fourth set of numbers where it says 9,000. So you have the 26.12.099, and we can go through a little bit. So the 26 is the fiscal year we're in. So we're in fiscal year FY26, and then the next two numbers is the fund, so the Fund 12. The 099 is just a location number, meaning district office for 099. And then 9,000 is the program. So anything that has to do with Board of Education, the stipends, the Social Security, Medicare, workers' comp, health insurance, materials and supplies, computer equipment, there'll be accounts with that, but they'll all start with the 2612, 099, 9000, then they may have different function and object. So in this case, the 0110 in that first account number is having to do with payroll. So these are the stipend amounts. That the first part on the left is the budgeted amount, and then the third column where it says expenditures is actuals that have taken place. And then the last column is the available, which is the difference between the budget and the expenditures. So in this case, there have been December, January, February, March, and April. 5 out of the 6 months of the 7 months of for this has taken place there. Is that helping?
I was wondering what, in the descriptions, and you have the months, it says 2D, 2B, 2F, 2L. What do those mean?
Great question. And so when payroll runs, this is all payroll, so they have something there on, they're just different codes. When we start, we would probably start over at A1, A2, A3. So this is, or 2, I guess it's 2D, 2B. So B was the December, 2B was the December all, and then there was something else, and then 2D. And then 2F is the January payroll, and then we see 2L. So they're not skipping over numbers, they're just cleanup runs or early pays that go in that. So the 2L is February, 2Q is March all, 2U is April all. When they get to 2Z, then they'll go to 3A, 3B. So it's just a code on, it's a payroll. Yep. And those same things will show up on the next one. You can see that Social Security is the next one, and everything's the same there except the object number. Instead of 0110, it's 0220. And so, and then the same codes for payroll show up below there. So if we turn on this one to page, so like on page 5 of 19, this is all materials and supplies, which is an 0610 object. So these are the things we've reviewed before. And this isn't just showing the latest month, it's showing from the start of these accounts all the way until the end of April, when this report goes through the last day of April. You can see that the total amount that has been spent for materials and supplies is that 8,400. and a budget of 12,000, so there's still 3,500 available. If we go to page 7, this is where it summarizes everything for the 9,000 program. So we can see that the total of all things in here is 82,000 that have spent so far. Then if we go to page 9, this kind of starts over on things with, page 8, which would be on the back, is everything having to do with the 9001 program, which is everything in the superintendent. And then we'd have another one for 9002, which is business administrator, and then 9035, which is technology services. So when we add up the summaries, the net income loss or the total expenditures, that 82,000 there, 100,000 on the next program, 3,000 on the 9002, and then the 9035, which is on page 16, the 5,100. That all four of those add up to the 194,519 that's on this first page here. So they tie together. This is just showing more of the details.
Jason, can you explain the difference between an encumbrance and an expenditure to the board? I'm looking specifically at page 17, about the middle of the page.
17, yep. Let me see that.
8,333.33.
The blue one for me. Yeah.
It's the category heads.
Page 17. It says identity automation, LP.
Yes. So what that is there's over on the description there, it says encumbrances, a purchase order has been entered but not been relieved yet. So an encumbrance, a purchase order has been placed, those funds are encumbered or tied up, and then when the actual bill comes and gets sent, it relieves that encumbrance and that PO. So the encumbrance is kind of like a pre-actual. Some of those we'll have on when Karen's working on the P-card statements. Some of those, they'll encumber that money until we actually have AP send the check, accounts payable send the check, then it moves from a pre-actual or encumbrance to the actual.
And that's helpful for us to know that that's already been spent, or at least
Called for,
and so it's not available for expenditure.
and these details that we have here, as a year from now, in July of 27, we will have a similar report to this one that'll have all the funds, and then we'll have a list of all the claims or checks for the month. The detail that we have here, it keeps getting longer each month, and it's just for ours. If this same thing was done for all the accounts for Alpine, it would be probably this thick, because this is year to date too, and so it won't have this detail when we get to that point, but we can always generate it or look at things. But a lot of times the Alpine board members will look at the checks. Oh, what was this check for 48,000 to this vendor? We can look that up and say, oh, this was for helmets for this program or whatever it is. We can look at all those things.
Jason, you talked about how at Alpine you created easy access for the board to look at things. Is that what this looks like? Is that what this is for us? Like a dashboard?
So the dashboard, what that would be links to different, so the links that are in the dashboard, which we will create, would be like, here's a link to the budget report, or here's to the ACFR, or here's to the enrollment book. So you don't have to go search for it. It'll all be in one place. But we'll put other things like the out of area that was shown today by Katie and Valen. That would be linked in there to be able to see, or the latest of the student counts that get sent out monthly. So that's why we've done that one monthly. There's not, we'll get to that point where we have that dashboard. Right now it would just be very few items, but yeah, we will build that.
Sounds good.
Especially when I have more team members too.
But this document is always available in the minutes, as part of our board meeting. So
Yep.
it's always accessible to the board and to the public.
And updated monthly.
Okay, is there any further discussion regarding expenditures that have been put forth? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the expenditure report and claims as presented. Can I get a motion?
I move that we accept the financial expenditure report.
Can I get a second?
I second.
Okay, that was motion by Vice President Sterling, seconded by Board Member Rex. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Back to Dr. Jensen.
Okay, we actually have quite a few items for discussion and action tonight. The first is just a simple resolution. It's Resolution 2006-005. It's right behind the last page of the expenditure report. This is just a request for admission to the Public Employees Retirement System. It's really a formality that in order for our future employees to have access to the URS system, and we have to vote officially to become part of that system. And so that's what is on this resolution.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to accept Resolution 2026-005, a resolution of the Timpanogos School District Board of Education authorizing and approving Timpanogos School District to request admission to the Public Employees Retirement System. Can I get a motion?
I'd make that motion as read.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Board Member Fugel, second by Board Member Wilson. Is there any discussion regarding this? Any questions?
Yeah, how come there's not a date as of July 1st, 2027 on this?
Because we already, I believe it's because we already have employees that are receiving. So Jason and Karen, is that right?
Yes, we are working with, so Alpine's payroll department is working with URS to figure out exactly when, if it can be a parent-child relationship for the next year. It's just, there's a big application process, application forms that are being filled out now that I'm filling out, and this is part of that kind of initiation of that, and then we'll turn in all the documentation that's needed to be able to finalize that, and then we'll determine with working with URS when that official date is.
Any other discussion or questions? Okay. Seeing as there's no more discussion, all in favor of approving Resolution 2026-005, the resolution of the Timpanogos School District Board of Education authorizing and approving Timpanogos School District to request admission to the Public Employees Retirement System. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing as none, that passes unanimously.
All right, on the next page, you'll see Resolution 2006-006. And it's just a simple resolution. Again, this is in order for Alpine to surplus major things like buses, they need the approval of all 3 districts. And so this is just a simple resolution saying there's 21 buses that they want to declare as surplus so that they can sell those. And so you can see the list on the second page. These are buses that really have not been used for a while and would not be continued to be used in the fleet. So it doesn't make sense to keep them around, but that's the situation. Jason?
There's in the resolution, there's the 21 buses, but there's also 2 other vehicles there too.
2 facilities vehicles, as well as you can see on your page. Okay, I
have a question.
Yeah.
Can I ask that now, or?
I think we motion in second, and then we have discussion, and then we vote. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll accept a motion for approving Resolution 2026-006, a resolution authorizing the declaration of 21 school buses and 2 vehicles as surplus property for disposition. I'll entertain a motion to approve this.
I so move.
I have a motion from Board Member Smith. Can I get a second?
I second.
Okay, I have a second from Vice President Hilton. Now would be appropriate time for a discussion about this.
Just a question. I know that we have surplus other buses. Is this the same, or are these more buses that we are?
These are additional buses that are in the boneyard. I think the goal they're
How many
working
buses are
on-
in the boneyard? Are we going to do this again and again?
Well, and you can read on here, this is the special ed, a lot of them are the special ed buses, and they haven't been used because they don't have air conditioning. And so I think the transportation is probably doing a more thorough dive into what is actually being used now that we're working on the split, and they're having to, we're going to be dividing up these buses. So that's what I think. And they're also recapturing space. Maybe these buses weren't bugging them, but now they're having to recapture. I don't know. That's my
Yeah. In I believe it was the Capitol meeting, Jason, maybe you remember this. Rob Smith, if I'm remembering correctly, talked about, this may have been in a superintendent's meeting as well, that the average age of our fleet used to be somewhere around 17 or 18 years old, and they've been trying to get that to a younger overall age. And so I think they're getting closer to like 12 or 11, which is good going into the split because we'll have a better fleet. And so a big part of this is buses wear out, and so we don't want to just keep buses we're not using around. So.
I guess my only caution would be with fewer buses, there will be fewer buses to split proportionally between us, but I'm going to take it in good faith that these need to be disposed of.
I know that during Capitol, they had approval in the Capitol process. There was an approval for purchasing quite a few.
Okay.
So I think it is really a regeneration of the fleet as opposed to
okay.
a reduction
Okay.
of fleet.
Good to know.
Was my understanding. Is there anybody?
Well, yeah, I'm just reading through these. They all say, most of them have all say over 2 years or a year have not even been used in the rotation. So they are sitting there, not part of the fleet.
And do you happen to remember, Jason, how many buses they approved to buy this year? Because it was a pretty big number, 40-ish or something? 24. 24. Okay.
Could Dr. Jensen or Jason, Mr. Sundberg, could you guys find out how long, like I'm looking, most of these are 2012 or before. How long do we want a bus to last? And how many miles do we want it to last? And I know things break and you say it's not worth fixing and it only has 250,000 miles or whatever. What's the goal there? Just so that it's in my, kind of know that, so when we see something like this, we're like, oh yeah, we're just trying to, thank you.
I think we need to hire a transportation person that can answer that too.
So the last year or so, where Cody McDade's name's on here, he and I met with some different companies to be able, not on the bus fleet, but it's similar, but on what's called the white fleet or the non-yellow fleet, and just different districts that have gone with these companies to be able to bring that average age from maybe even on those like driver's ed cars and other vehicles down from being 8 to 10 years old to 3 to 5 years old. And you are putting more, it's a pretty neat analysis. So you are putting more up front, but you're saving so much on maintenance and then selling them at a time when you can get the most out of them. It's a little different with buses, but that's kind of the optimization of things. And they've been trying to do that with buses also, with leases and other things, to be able to bring down a lot on the maintenance cost of things and be able to have a higher resale, kind of this big analysis of the break-even point of where that is. So I think it has, like Dr. Jensen was saying, instead of something being 17 to 18 years old, if we can get for the buses, they'll last longer. But if they're somewhere between 8 to 12 years before you're rotating those, you're going to save a lot on repairs, but also, like on the white fleet, it's a lot on fuel efficiency too, for those things.
Okay, is there any additional discussion or questions? Okay.
Well, I will say that looking at the age on these buses, they're old buses. They should have gone away a couple of years ago. So you got to turn the fleet, or the longer you keep them, you lose value even though you're not using them. So.
Yeah, and just having them sit there if they're in the boneyard,
Yeah.
there's wear and tear on them just sitting,
Well, you get
weathering, right?
Yeah, and you got these 2000 and 2002 box truck and a flatbed, boy, they're old. And so
Well, I
that's,
just look at my thought is just not having air conditioning for a special ed bus. That's with our schools getting running earlier in August. Yeah, that's hot. And they're on the buses. Some of our special ed students are on buses longer than our gen ed. So I think that's hopefully they've been replaced in this special ed um, criteria. So
Another reason we're seeing these now is, so as soon as the vote happened in 2024 to split the district, these, at that point, they couldn't sell any surplus, any Alpine couldn't, unless they went to all 11 cities and asked them. So they waited till school boards were in place to be able to kind of streamline that a little bit.
that's a great point. Okay, is there any further questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor of passing resolution 2026-006, wrong one. Resolution authorizing the declaration of 21 school buses and 2 vehicles as surplus property for disposition. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Our agenda is not right. It says 2006.
I was just noticing
Yeah.
that.
So maybe
Should
we,
say
just a note, we need to
2026.
change our
I
agenda.
would like to make a motion to amend our agenda to read properly as for both our resolution 2026-005 and to
Item 2.
help me parliamentarian. How do I do this? I make a motion to change items 1 and 2 from resolution 2006 and 2006-005 and -006 to 2026 and 2026-005 and 006. Will someone motion for that?
I second.
Okay. We got a motion from Board Member Wilson and a second from Board Member Rex to amend our agenda so they match the actual resolutions that we're passing. Any discussion on this item? Thank you for the catch, Michelle.
They noticed it too. Yeah.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great. Okay, so we've changed our agenda, so it's appropriately 2026-005 and 2026-006, and both of those have passed. So we will move those on to our to Alpine School District so that they can collect the ones from Aspen Peaks and Lake Mountain and make it so.
Okay, item number 3, if you go to the next page, you can see the schedule of board meetings. And it was proposed that we add a May board meeting. And the main reason for that is if you look between May 6th and June 17th, that would be a 6-week gap, which as we start to talk about our item number 4, and there's starting to be some other things that we anticipate, a 6-week gap is going to be an extremely long gap in between. It'll still be 3 weeks in between the May 6th and the June 17th meetings, which is a little bit longer than normal. But it's proposed that we add the May 27th meeting so that we can do the business we need to do as a board.
There's also the need, as we have been talking about boundary study, to add we're going to talk about that? Adding the, oh, okay. Okay, so this is official I'm accepting motions to approve adding a meeting on May 27th. I would like to add that this area will not be available. And so our location, we're working with our technology department to find a location for that meeting. So that will be noticed and announced. We'll let you know ahead of time on our social media and on the public notice website where that will be. So I will entertain a motion to add the May 27th board meeting and study session prior. I have a motion from Vice President Hilton.
I second.
And a second from Board Member Sorensen. Any discussion on this addition?
I can just say I can't be there, so I hope they'll have a way for me to join virtually.
Thanks, Board Member X. We'll make a note of that.
I thought we were going to talk about meeting on the 13th as well. Is this not the time to do that?
Dr. Jensen's going to talk about that next.
That's just a study session.
It's just going to be adding a study session. So we're just officially on our board meeting. We're talking about that right now. Any discussion? Any other questions? Okay. All in favor of adding the May 27th board meeting with a location to be announced? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
And then there's one other thing to just be aware of on the calendar. We may have the need for an additional brief meeting next week to consider just an item that Alpine has asked us to consider, depending on what the will of the board is, and we've got to talk to individual members of the board to determine that. So I just want to, in the spirit of full transparency, we want to just let you know that that's a possibility, that we would have an additional meeting next Monday to just discuss that one item.
Would that be here? The meeting on the 11th would not be here?
No, it would not be here because they're going to be using this room. But we will certainly notice that ahead of time and make it clear. We also don't have need for a board meeting, but we do need to have a study session next week on the 13th. Today we had a great discussion in study session about robust elementary schools, and we want to do the same thing regarding robust secondary schools. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in number 4, but we need to consider those. Do we need to vote on those, or is that just? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Then item number 4.
I just received note from our technology department that our meeting on the 27th will be at the Timpanogos High School Media Center. So that's where we will be on the 27th.
All right, number 4, opening a boundary study. This is something that we've talked about at length in over several meetings. If you watched last, we've talked about the Moabs, the mother of all boundary studies. And today we had a fantastic presentation from Valen Thomas and Katie Bowman, a dialogue around that robust elementary, what we're looking for as we consider any kind of boundary change or any kind of consolidation. One of the things I appreciate about that I've seen from all of you is that there truly is everything on the table and nothing's been decided. And one of the things I also appreciate is that we're building these criteria about what is a robust school ahead of even messing with any possible configuration. Also, I want to emphasize that as we open this, assuming we open this boundary study officially, that this just begins the formal process. This does not in any way approve any boundary changes or consolidations. That this will just be the fact that we're opening it, and that over the coming months we will start to look at those types of things. And there's as you know, in some of our discussions, there's a significant legal process we have to meet, but we want to exceed that considerably to make sure that we're involving our educators, our public, and getting a lot of input above and beyond what the law requires. But we will also be completely compliant with those different milestones and those different dates that we have to hit. And so at this point, we'll turn it over to discussion and a motion.
Okay, I want to open it to entertain a motion for our boundary study.
I move that the Board of Education initiate a formal boundary study regarding potential changes to school attendance boundaries, grade configurations, and special enrollment programs, including potential school consolidations or closures, with required notice to affected families and public hearings prior to any final decision.
Thank you for that, Vice President Hilton. Can I get a second on that motion?
I second.
I get a second from Board Member Rex. I would like to mention that in accordance with Utah law, the board will direct administration to provide appropriate notice to families and stakeholders who may be affected by potential boundary changes, conduct a transparent study process, including stakeholder engagement and data analysis, and schedule public hearings prior to any board consideration of boundary adjustments. No boundary, I want to reiterate what has already been said, that no boundary changes are approved through this motion. This action is solely initiating the process of our boundary study. I would like to open it up for discussion. It's been motioned, so we're discussing.
I think it's traditional for those who made the motion and seconded to make the first comments, so.
I'm all in favor. I think this is, we're prepared. I really appreciate the fact that we are starting now so that it gives us enough time to do this, I think, in an appropriate way to gather the information that's going to inform our decisions, whatever they may be.
Board Member Rex?
I am excited to do this because everybody knows it needs to be done, and it's just good to get started. I'm really excited to get the feedback from teachers, from admin, from community members, from parents, from everybody, so that we can make the best decisions. And I know we won't be able to make everybody happy, but hopefully we will be able to make education better.
Board Member Sorensen?
I'd like to say that everything we've done up to this point has also prepared us to open this boundary study, visiting all the schools that we took the time to do that, and just gathering information that way, and even visiting the schools with our vision tour is just adding to the bank of information that we need to make these boundary, to begin and advance our boundary study. So I just think we're preparing more and more and more and gathering more information.
I think we want to be clear that this, any decisions that we make will be done in a timely way, and also they will take effect in the 27, not this coming school year, but the year following. Our first year of operation. Yeah, it will be during our first year of operation. So this is not, we're not talking about next year, but we are talking about a timely decision that will be made in plenty of time to help families adjust.
I want to just say that even though this might be a hard decision, there might be lots of ramifications, it's going to end the pins and needles that many of our parents, students, administrators, and maybe even especially the teachers have been feeling over the last couple of years, when this rumor goes around and this rumor and then this announcement, and that it'll, when we're done, we'll be able to be done, and the waiting is over.
Yeah, and I love how Michelle put that, as far as we're creating we're collecting this bank of information. It's been amazing to me during all of this. You know, I think we all came into this with kind of some ideas on what needed to happen, but as we have gone through processes to learn and gain that information, my bank is just, it's getting fuller and fuller, but I still recognize that it's still lacking. There's so much more information that we need to collect, and I love it that this board is dedicated, and they want to be able to hear from so many different people on this issue, so that we can not only make decisions that are going to be impactful for years, decades to come, and be looking to the future, not only what is good for education now, but what is going to be good for education in the future. So I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be a lot of work, and I'm grateful we have the team that we do to be able to draw upon their expertise and their willingness to research some of these things. So let's get going.
I want to chime in and say that it's really important to me to seek perspectives different than my own. And so I'm really interested, and I think we all are interested in understanding one another and what we think is important, and listening and seeking actively what do our educators think are important, and what do we think, what do parents and other community members think is important. And I say that with complete, genuine honesty. That's an important part, and we want touch points from all of our constituents and stakeholders along the way. And it's going to take a little bit longer, but I think in the end, again, it's going to be a much better outcome for our students and communities. At least that's the hope.
And I would just add one thing. I appreciate Alpine School District's team that has had a lot of experience in these things. They've developed a tool that wasn't even available even a few months ago that will allow us to do some things that we couldn't do on this scale very well. And as well as Eric Woodhouse and his team just helping advise us in some of these elements that go way beyond just the actual statute requirements. They've been outstanding in helping support and will continue to help guide us through this.
Yeah, it takes a village, right? Okay, it takes so many people. Any other further comments or discussion regarding this motion? Okay. This is a pretty historic one, so I'm going to go ahead and do a roll call vote. So all in favor of the motion to open our boundary study, Board Member Sorensen?
Aye.
Board Member Fugel?
Aye.
Board Member Rex?
Yes.
Board Member Wilson?
Aye.
Board President Lyman? Aye. Board Vice President Hilton?
Aye.
Board Member Smith?
Yes.
Okay, it appears that that is unanimous. Okay. We now have time for our superintendent and board member reports. I think we said a lot of the things we want to say, but we'll turn the time over to, we'll start with Superintendent Jensen.
Okay, the one thing I would just like to comment on is we did our 19th school visit this morning. We'll do 2 more tomorrow and 1 more Friday, and then we'll wrap up next week. And these visits have been very specifically to help us refine our draft vision and values that the board put together about a month ago. And while we will end up with a much better product on our vision and values, one of the things I've appreciated most is that it's also refining us. And when I say us, it's been amazing to watch. At almost every visit, we've had 2 or 3 board members there present, listening to our teachers, our students, our parents, and our school leaders. We're doing 4 different visits at each school. And I just wanted to thank you for taking the time, because it's a big time commitment. But it's been rich as well, and I feel like I'm different because of it, and I sense that you are as well. And I feel like those visits have been a really valuable, meaningful, culture-building effort as we move forward. And I look forward to an upcoming study session where we'll take all the data that we've gathered from that and start to formulate, okay, how do we want to adjust our draft so that it really reflects our vision, meaning our entire district. So that's been a rich experience for me, and I've appreciated the level of support from this board.
Okay, we're going to start with Board Member Smith.
I feel like I've made the comments I need to make, so thank you, but
I'd like to just make an observation about the Clear Creek property. Alpine School District announced that the Clear Creek property has been listed for sale. And I just want to make clear that that was done in consultation with all 3 of the existing districts. That was part of the conversations that we have had in negotiations. And all three districts were in agreement that it would be important for us to at least explore the possibility of selling Clear Creek. So in listing it, we're gathering information about whether or not it's going to be then appropriate to sell. And I make that distinction because depending on what we're not going to sell it just because someone offers. And if someone offers $1 million and it's appraised for 10 million, then we'll keep it. Do you know what I mean? So this is not a done deal.
We will discuss.
There we go. We'll discuss it. But that is there, and that's a challenging thing because Clear Creek has been an important part of Alpine School District for a long time. I know it's been an important part at least for 52 years because I went to Clear Creek as a 5th grader for a week and had a great learning opportunity there. So I know it's been around for a long time. I know it means a lot to a lot of people. In exploring this possibility, it doesn't mean that our commitment here in Timpanogos School District is away from the benefits and value that outdoor learning opportunities and recreation can provide to our students. It just simply means maybe Clear Creek is not in our best interest to continue that particular pursuit. Just wanted to go on record as saying that.
Thank you. Board Member Wilson?
Oh, thank you. First of all, I wanted to say a welcome to the latest round of new hires for our school district.
Yeah, they're right
let's
here.
let's
We have a slide.
let's do that.
Go ahead, Ada. Would you like to welcome them?
Yeah, we're excited. Valen, you're in the room. Thank you so much for accepting this. In education, we almost call it a calling, but this position as Director of Elementary Teaching and Learning. We've already heard you and benefited from your expertise during our study session. We're also welcoming Cindy Davis, who's a current member of the State School Board and also very active. She's been a principal in Alpine School District, and she's UVU adjunct professor, I believe, but she will be our Director of Secondary Teaching and Learning Grades Post-Secondary Attainment.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't take out grades.
Oh.
It used to say 7 through 12, sorry.
Okay, and maybe I'm interested in finding out more about that position. But also Tyler Vigu, our current Foundation Director in Alpine School District. He will be Director of Communications and Foundations. So, Superintendent, I'm interested in Cindy Davis's title.
Yeah, so one of the things we're super excited about is the core work of everything we do is really about teaching and learning, right? And so Valen Thomas will be the Director of Teaching and Learning over K through 6. Cindy Davis will be the Director of Learning, Teaching and Learning over 7 through 12. And they will team with Katie Bowman and Peter Glon, as well as one of the things we are going to see is Darren's emphasis on coaching will be in full service of teaching and learning. One of the things we're excited about with both of these educators is they both have K-12 experience, which is kind of unique. And so we see really them being at the core of, as we continue to develop this vision that we have of learning in Timpanogos School District, this is going to be the core team leading that with a lot of support. And then we have to remind ourselves everything around that is in support of that. And so we're excited. I'm not. No, I'm not sure if that was part of the title, but.
I think Cindy and Peter chatted when I was gathering some information to introduce Cindy, and this post-secondary attainment was something that I guess they talked about.
Okay.
And I would Yeah, I would assume what they mean by that is I think one of the things we want to communicate to every one of our students is that high school diploma is not enough anymore. That it's simply not the end. And that doesn't mean everyone has to go to college, but everyone should be prepared and ready and go on to something more, whether that's trade school, whether that's the military, whether that's um, college. There's a lot of options there, but we want every student to be prepared beyond that.
Thank you. And I apologize, Michelle, if if you were going to do that.
Oh, no.
But I also want to say thank you to Katie and Valen for our study session, and just invite our public to listen to this introductory information about what a healthy elementary school could, the criteria that we'll be looking at as we analyze boundaries and how they will affect our schools. So thank you for that information.
I also want to thank Valen and Katie. That was a great presentation. And I also think it's great going and doing our vision and mission discussions with all the schools. My favorite is talking to the students, because really that is where the reason we're here, and I love it. I also I'm on the policy committee with Ada and Sterling, and I've been looking at the policies of Alpine because we officially adopted them back in December. But now we need to go through and look at them and at least put Timpanogos' name in there and so in doing so, I was trying to figure out how much policy, because it's just online, there isn't like a book. So I decided to print them all out. And in case any of you are wondering, it came up to 2 binders like that. There's a lot of policy. So I hope you guys are all really excited to read policy and to help, make them our own in better ways. Anyway.
Well, and I think I just want to make a comment on that. I think yeah. No, maybe I won't. Guy.
Hey, if you want to, I've still got probably my 2 big binders with the policies.
Oh, really?
But they probably won't do you any good because they've been amended so many times. Anyway, we used to have it on paper. Okay, that's how old I am. Okay, so anyway, that was the good old days. So anyway, but hey, I'd just like to talk about our day we spent yesterday with the BYU partnership, and it was really informative, and it's come a long ways over the years and offer a lot more things. So I look forward to when that becomes an agenda item, when we discuss a little bit more and put it to vote to join the partnership as a member. So that's what I wanted. So it's a great day.
Board Member Smith was so humble, he didn't talk about our district dash that he's organized.
Yes.
And I just wanted to call him out on that and say kudos. That has turned into something so fun.
12 people. We started with 4 and now we're up to 12.
Yeah. And
All are welcome.
yes. So not this Saturday, but the next, there'll be another edition of 7:30 at Lake Ridge. Yeah. So that's just a fun touch point. And as many touch points as we can provide our employees and community, I am all for that. And it's just been fun to see it grow. So thank you for organizing that.
Thank you. I want to take a minute and thank Michelle. First of all, she does these cute videos. I'd also like to put a plug out for our Facebook page. If you're not following our Facebook page, please do. We're trying to get all of our information out there. It's our best way of communicating right now. So please follow our Facebook page if you haven't already. And Michelle has done some great videos. If you haven't seen them, go back and watch the District Dash videos. It was May the 4th be with you for this last Saturday one. It was great. It was so fun. So thank you for your creativity, Michelle. I want to talk a little bit about this work. I think I've said this to several people. This work that this board has been doing, it's very, I don't know how to say it. It's kind of magical. the work of creation that we are doing. People, we go to these vision tour, and people are saying, they'll come up and say, you probably don't get told this enough. Thank you for the work you guys are doing, and we actually I hear that a lot, and so I want to thank those who are thanking us to recognize the work that we're doing. But I also want to let you know that this work is energizing. It's been just it's been one of my favorite job I've ever had is doing this work, and the power and the, I don't know how to say it, put it into words, the energy that we feel as we're working on this, creating something not necessarily from scratch, because we are utilizing some frameworks that have already been set by ASD, but this work of creation is just amazing. I'm not an artist, I don't do art, but I imagine that's something that draws people to being artists, is that act of creation, of making something out of nothing. And I'm so grateful I get to do that with all of you, and I'm grateful that gives me purpose, and each day in the hard time and in the sacrifice that we are making, it's going to be worth it, and I'm grateful for that. So yeah, that's my comment. Just thank you. Okay, we have need tonight to go into a closed session per Utah Code 524205 to discuss personnel, property, litigation, and collective bargaining tonight. So we need to do a roll call vote to adjourn here and go into a closed session. So I will go down the line. Board Member Smith.
I move that we go into.
We have to move. Okay.
Yeah, I move that we go into closed session for those purposes that you enumerated.
Can I get a second?
I second it.
Okay. So thank you, Ada, for putting that out. There's been a motion by Board Member Wilson to go into closed session and a second by Board Member Smith. We'll now do a roll call vote to enter closed session. Board Member Smith.
Yay.
Vice President Hilton.
Yes. Yes.
Board President Lyman, yes. Board Member Wilson.
Aye.
Board Member Rex.
Yay.
Board Member Fugel.
Yes.
Board Member Sorensen.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor, we are now, and we will now enter our closed session after visiting for a second with our attendees.